Home and away spoilers. Lacey hires a private investigator on Joe. Next week on Home and Away in the UK, Lacey agrees to take the money her dad's offering her, but she's going to use it to hire a private investigator. Last week, David revealed to daughter Lacey that he'd sold their family home, having decided he couldn't cope with living there any longer after the death of his partner and Joe and Lacey's mum Christina. This week, he also revealed to Lacey that he'd planned to give her a share of the house sale, to the sum of $100. However, when David confirmed that Joe was also getting a cut, Lacey rejected his offer, unwilling to accept her sister being financially rewarded for killing her mother. When David asked if he could do anything to win Lacey over, she told him that she longs for a way to remember her mother, and asked if she could have Christina's eternity ring, which she and Joe had picked out for David and Christina's vow renewal. However, this left David in a tricky situation, as Joe already had the ring in her possession, carrying it on her necklace. Joe refused when David asked if she would be willing to part with the ring, and she soon suffered a panic attack when she was overwhelmed by painful memories of the accident. When Joe later came across Lacey in the surf club, the situation got out of control as Lacey once again accused Joe of killing their mother, leading to a full-on scrap in the middle of the surf club. Having been summoned by Alf, David forced his daughters upstairs, telling them that they wouldn't be leaving until they sorted things out. Returning to the drama next week, the two sisters continue to struggle to agree on who should get their mum's eternity ring. Lacey insists that Joe can have everything else. She just wants the ring. But David tries to reason with her by explaining that Joe has had it for months, so should be the one to keep it. Of course, Lacey doesn't take his reasoning well. It's good. I know whose side you're on. Despite Joe not wanting to hand the ring over, she makes it clear that she still wants them to get back to the close relationship they used to have. What happened to us? We used to be such a great team, Joe asks, but Lacey's response is as cold as ever. You drove my mum into a tree. Tane arrives soon after, and immediately notices that Joe isn't okay. As the pair head upstairs to Salt, Joe explains that she's wanted Lacey to be back in their family for ages, but she'd still struggle with the idea of handing over the ring. He points out that it's worth asking Lacey whether her having the ring would actually be a first step to fixing their rift. As the pair continue their chat at the beach, Tane asks Joe why Lacey blames her for their mother's death. As Joe opens up, she reveals that she and her mum were involved in a car accident in which Joe was driving. However, Joe can't remember what happened. It's like my brain has blocked it out, she explains, but the police investigated and found I wasn't at fault. As for why Lacey still blames her, Joe explains that her sister simply can't accept that sometimes bad things happen for no reason. Meanwhile, back at the apartment, Theo tries to help Lacey through her anger as he encourages her to explain to Joe what her mother's ring means to her and why she wants it so much. Lacey takes Theo's advice and invites Joe over, where she explains that their parents' vow renewal was the last time that their family were all in one place and happy. Joe explains that she feels the same way, and that's why she wears the ring so close to her heart. No closer to agreeing on who should have it, Joe tells Lacey that they need to at least stop fighting about it for their dad's sake. Recognizing that their fighting is only making David's grief all the more difficult, the pair eventually decide that the best option is to give him the ring. While it seems like the family is finally making progress, it's not to be. As soon as Lacey and Joe hand over the ring at Salt, Lacey takes off, making it clear that she did what she came to do. As she returns home to Theo, she tells him that now that the ring issue is sorted, she's got no reason to talk to her family ever again. Joe summons Lacey to meet up again the following morning, wanting to push their dad into getting professional help for his grief. But Lacey isn't willing to listen. She makes it clear that nothing has changed and she doesn't want anything to do with them. Joe tries to change her mind by opening up about how much the accident has affected her. She freezes whenever she thinks about it, and gets panic attacks which take her right back to the moment of the crash. However, Lacey has no sympathy. Nothing you will say is gonna make this my problem. She heads home to rant to Theo about her sister's interference, but is shocked when Theo gives her a serve. Joe likely has PTSD from the crash. And Lacey's continued anger towards her family isn't the behavior of the girl he fell in love with. What's more, what if she's wrong about what she believes happened the day that her mum died? Back outside, Tane finds Joe in the middle of a panic attack. He comforts her as she explains that it was caused by her relationship with her sister, but that she doesn't want to give him all the details of what's going on in her life. He agrees not to push things, and after calling David, he sits with her at Salt until he can take over. When David arrives, he gives Joe a hug, just as Theo and Lacey walk by downstairs. As Lacey spots their embrace, she gets angry, as Theo does his best to point out that Joe's PTSD doesn't look like an act from where he's standing. Wondering if he's onto something, Lacey asks her dad if they can meet. She asks him to go over what happened with the accident. David protests, reminding her that they've already been through the accident report. But Lacey insists. She's ready to hear it this time, and wants to understand why he's so certain that it wasn't Joe's fault. They go through the events of that fateful day, with David explaining that there were no skid marks, speed wasn't an issue, and there were no drugs or alcohol in Joe's system. So the only theory they've got is that Joe swerved around an animal. When Lacey points out how convenient it is that her sister doesn't remember, David reminds him that it was a traumatic event and she simply blocked it out. There's nothing to suggest that it was Joe's fault. Lacey then tells her dad that she's changed her mind about his offer of giving her $100 from the house sale. It's an extremely generous offer and she'd like to accept it. David is delighted by her change of heart, and tells her that he'll sort the transfer right away. However, once David has left, Lacey tells Theo exactly why she's changed her mind. She's going to use the money to hire a private investigator, so they can finally figure out what happened on the day of the accident. Can Theo convince Lacey that her plan will only divide her family further? Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more movie spoilers next week. Goodbye and see you again.